You can check out Twitter and Facebook. We'll have the link to our live stream shortly via Skelly Video Productions. And whoops, what happened there? Oh no, I turned myself off. All right, no, that's fine. It's happy. Who's here for the first time? Show of hands. Excellent, welcome. We hope it's not your last. We've been doing this particular thing, connecting people and ideas over coffee and bacon, since 2008. So we have lots of fun and exciting things in store for the future. You can go to smbmsp.org. You can find out about upcoming events. You can sign up for our mail list, learn a little bit more about us, and we would love to hear from you if you have any ideas. Thank you for being here. Two quick notes about upcoming events, both in this space. 29th of March, we're going to do, this title is under review here, but that's the gist of it. Cybersecurity tips for small to medium-sized businesses. I want to sex that up a little bit. But Jeremy Swenson from Abstract Forward Consulting will be presenting that. And then on the 25th of April, we're going to get an in-depth session on influencer marketing by Maggie Lamack from Fast Horse. So keep those in mind. We're going to have registration details coming very soon, as in next week, to smbmsp.org. All right, so now we can start switching stuff out. So this is, for those of you who are here for the first time, we do a case studies event like this 3-ish, 4 times a year, and it's always very exciting. It's always a real range of information and clients that are part of the case study. So we're thrilled to have 3 local agencies presenting today. The first is IFC Next, formerly known as Olson, and I'd like you to welcome Ben Baxter and Solveig Franz.
Is this on now? Oh, cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Baxter, and I'm on the social team over at ICF Next.
And I'm Solveig Franz. I'm an account executive.
Cool. So as he said, we used to be called Olson, and now we are called ICF Next. Real quick, over the past however many years, ICF has been purchasing capabilities and agencies around the world like Mostra, the Pulse Point Group, and of course Olson. And in the new year, we all kind of fell under the same hat and now are called ICF Next. Uh-oh. Oh.
There we go.
No, we got it. Okay, cool. And so, of course, today we are still the same great agency, the same great people like Solveig, and of course the same awesome clients like Belize.
Alrighty, let's get into it, shall we? Okay, so we have been working with Travel Belize for about 4 years, and we do everything for them, from their advertising to their social media, their PR, and our main goal is to promote travel to Belize from the United States and Canada. So from a social media perspective, one of the main things that we try to do is really incentivize travel behavior through engagement. There we go. Oh.
Is this one on? Do you want my mic? Yeah. Yeah.
Let's try this one. So we had a local opportunity in the Minneapolis market for social media that we wanted to share with you. So as you guys know, because we're experiencing this right now, winter in Minnesota basically sucks. Especially it's freezing cold, and especially when it comes sooner than we're anticipating. I feel like we're always surprised every single year. So we wanted to come up with an idea called Freeze to Belize. And basically how this came about was our clients at the Belize Tourism Board came to us and they said, hey, Sun Country is going to be launching a brand new direct flight from Minneapolis to Belize City. You should do it if you can. It's running between now and April. And they wanted to have us try to engage with people in Minneapolis to make sure that they knew about this new flight. Oops. Oh, it kind of goes kind of quickie, doesn't it? There you go. So basically what we did is we launched the Freeze to Belize scavenger hunt on social media.
Yeah, so as Solveig said, our idea was kind of centered on the first freeze that happens in Minneapolis. So what we did was we waited until the first freeze was recorded at Minneapolis, Jesus Christ, at Minneapolis Airport. Sorry. Yeah, jeez. So we had to wait until the first freeze was recorded at the airport. That's kind of how the timeliness and the media hook for our idea. We knew that Minnesotans and media love to complain about the weather or talk about the weather or tell their friends about the weather or dream about the weather. So we knew that this would be an insight that we could tap into and mobilize people and really engage them. But we, of course, had to wait for Mother Nature to do her job. Wow, really getting ahead of myself here. Yeah, do you want to maybe? I cannot be trusted with that. So as we waited for Mother Nature to do her job, we were behind the scenes, kind of getting things ready, doing our job. So we had a concept tie all locked in. We were waiting for the first freeze. We had an airline partner confirmed, that was Sun Country Airlines. And we just were really busy working on rules, locations, and logistics and planning that out. And as you'll see in a little bit, working on the technology and getting that tested in development, as well as building out media materials, content, and our paid plan, and of course getting that approved by the client and the partner as well. And yeah. So what our idea was is that we would launch a scavenger hunt in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but instead of just tweeting something out or putting something in the newspaper, we decided to build a chatbot on Facebook. So once we knew that the weather was going to hit 32 degrees in Minneapolis, we had key team members go and hide our 5 toucan medallions. And I'm not kidding when I say that it was a very small group of people. Solveig and I weren't even allowed to know where these toucans were. Something about my big mouth, I think. So you can click. So they went around to Minneapolis, St. Paul to key areas in parks and landmarks and stuff like that and hid these medallions, and then they had to go out and hide 2 additional ones as well, because as you'll see in a little bit, they were found kind of quicker than expected. One day we'll get this presentation kind of flow correct. But so we had the temperature dropping, we had the toucans landed in their location, and now we needed people to find them. So what we did is we relied on artificial intelligence through a chatbot on Facebook to engage people. We knew that everybody has Facebook already downloaded on their phone. It's something they use regularly. When they go and complain or talk about the weather, they're going to jump onto Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or call their friends and family, I don't know. So that's how we decided to kind of have this activation come to life. So what we did is we, through paid efforts and media, as you'll hear about in a little bit, we promoted the idea and let everybody know that this is what we were doing. So all you had to do really on your Facebook app is go to Belize's website, Facebook page, and message us Freeze to Belize, and then you were thrown into the chatbot where we had to share your location, and then we started giving you clues, and as you got kind of warmer to the medallion or further away, the chatbot said you were getting hotter or colder. And then we have this kind of cool case study that can kind of talk about it a lot better than I can.
We might need to hit play.
Winter in Minnesota usually means this. But now it also means this. Because for the first time ever, Sun Country Airlines is offering non-stop flights from Minneapolis, St. Paul to Belize City. To get the word out, the Belize Tourism Board did the unthinkable. It made the first freeze actually enjoyable for Minnesotans. Good morning.
So cool. Yeah, that kind of puts a bow on all of it, but I can kind of go through it again at a really high level. That we just waited for the temperature and kind of waited for our insight to really activate and to get people excited about it. We had them experience our brand kind of in person and interact with us kind of out in the wild, which was awesome. And then we gave away 7 round-trip couples trips at the end of it. Yeah, I think the next slide goes into that as well.
I think
Does
that
yours
works.
work?
Yes,
Okay.
we're good. Yeah, so I think basically this was a really cool like social media play that we did, but then it was really integrated because we incorporated PR. We were incorporating a real life event that people could engage with, and we actually had 500 Minnesotans engage with it, which was really, really impressive in such a short amount of time. And we spent literally no money on this. It was very, very good. We worked with Sun Country to get the round trip tickets down to Belize, basically flight vouchers, and then just made the toucans, hid them, and then used earned media and social media to get the word out. So then this is just a quick overview. I don't need to spend a ton of time on this. So for media coverage, as I mentioned, PR also had a role in this. So the total announcement of the flight announcement in general, and then also the Freeze to Belize scavenger hunt, we had 36 media placements in the local area and 22 million impressions. And then here's just a couple quick stats on the app. So we had close to 500 people participating. There were over 1,400 active chatbot sessions. Nearly 11,000 messages were sent in one day, which is crazy. And then we had over 58 hours of gameplay and 4,200 location checks. And then I think this kind of overall ties to what we try to do on the Belize Tourism Board account as a whole. For us, it is about, one, bringing travelers down to the country of Belize, but then also boosting GDP for the country too. So this is just a quote from the Prime Minister during his New Year message of this year. In the last quarter, they had nearly 15% growth in overnight arrivals, and it's activations like these that they feel are really, really important for boosting awareness about Belize and then getting people to travel down to the country.
Yeah, and I think real quick, lastly, just kind of why it worked, or why we think it worked. Like I said, I think 15 times already, but it really tapped into a local and Minnesotan insight about the weather. The chatbot was really awesome in doing something that other mediums really couldn't, and that was kind of delivering personalized content and messages to our game players. The premium incentive of free trips to Belize and the time crunch was a great media hook, as well as something to generate consumer interest. And we used technology, which we always look to, but in this instance, the technology was something that was already on people's phone. We kind of eliminated a really big barrier to entry for people when just utilizing an app like Facebook, which is something that they spend a lot of time on already. And we added to a growing set of gameplay tactics for the brand, something we've done in the past. Solveig and I were in Belize in November. For playing a game of hide and seek, so we're very thematic with our game playing. And it was just really a seamless digital experience for everybody. And Solveig touched on this earlier, but as you saw in the recap video and in her statistics, we spent about 35 or 36 cents on paid media. And that's really uncommon for something like this, for the engagement that you get for social media. And this is just something that we talk about all the time and we do every day on the Belize account and on the other accounts we work on, of just really integrating our PR and social tactics, because I'm sure that you guys all know that those things are so interconnected as we try to, reach out to people and engage them. And I think thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Sorry, this may be an obvious one, but having spent the last 8 years on the corporate side, to hear you say it cost 35 cents is kind of interesting, because I'm guessing the country of Belize did not spend 35 cents on this. What kind of investment does it take for somebody to do this kind of campaign?
Yeah, do you want me to speak on that, Solveig? So yeah, the 35 or 36 cents is just kind of our working media dollars and like to amplify the message. I think the big bulk of the money came from, I think, just the man hours and the fee to get it all together. But when we think about like out of pockets or fee, that's kind of what we spent. And then I think a couple $100 to build the medallions. But yeah, we relied on earned media, which is something that we earn and we don't really pay for. So that's kind of the big bulk of it. But from I think the brand side, it's just like paying for our time to activate it. And then of course, the incentive was given to us from Sun Country Airlines. So the round trip tickets did not cost anything to us.
Hi. So maybe I missed. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Is this like a $50,000 campaign, or is it
Yeah, I don't know the exact dollars of how much we allotted in fee, but I guess the crux of my statement is that I think it was a big investment in people hours, not in out of pockets or paying for production and things like that.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Hi. So maybe I missed this, but did you actually program the bot in Facebook to respond, or did your programmers work some magic?
We programmed it within Facebook as well as using a platform called Chat Fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else?
Did you guys get a lot of complaints that this was a social-only contest and people were like, well, I don't have Facebook, what do I do?
Yeah, you'd think so. When we've run other sweepstakes, we've had that come up before, like, oh, I can only do it on this social channel, whatever. Surprisingly, no. Yeah, and I think it was also because the toucans were found so quickly. And then as part of our sweepstakes rules, too, they could also, if they weren't able to get on Facebook, if they just happened to be in the park and, like, found the medallion, which happened one case, they were able to just email us directly. So, yeah. I know. We had one person find it in the park, and he's like, did I win this? And we're like, yeah, I guess you did.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I know. Yeah, we had one guy do it. Yeah.
How was the scavenger hunt announced, and how quickly were the toucans found?
The toucans were found, we hid them super early in the morning, and they were all found by the end of the day, probably like 3 o'clock. It was super quick. So from an announcement standpoint, we had secured a couple, we had pre-pitched some media so that they knew to share the news right away. And then we also shared it on social media channels too.
Anybody else? All right. Oh, we'll take one more? Okay, last one.
How much contingency planning did you do in case they didn't get found that you didn't have to use? And then also, are you going to do it next year so I can be ready?
I know. We actually had a few people be like, can we make this an annual thing to hide them every year? We had a couple contingency plans. We were hoping that they would be found very, very quickly. But if they weren't, I'm trying to think back to what we did. Do you remember?
Yeah, so I think something we didn't mention was this, took place on a Friday. And so I think internally we're all really hoping that, of course, everything was found by the end of business on Friday. But we were prepared to continue to monitor the chatbot and things like that. Something we didn't really mention was, working with a programmed system like a chatbot is that there still is human hours in it, invested in monitoring it and making sure that everything goes according to plan. So we did have a small team of people just monitoring the conversations that were taking place and making sure everything was going according to plan. And we were prepared to then do that, not really overnight, but through the weekend, and hopefully everything would be wrapped by Monday. I think from a PR perspective, you want to go?
Sure. I remember one thing, there was one at the end of the day we were waiting on. It didn't end up happening, but we had conversations in the office do we have to literally go to the park and move it so it's easier to be found? That was something that we talked about, but we didn't end up needing to do.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Thank
give
you.
them a round of applause. Thank you both. All right, so we have a number of positive things happening. The refill of coffee just came in for anybody looking for that. And Top Rank is next, presenting their case study. Ashley Zeckman and Jane Bartel. Please give them a round of applause.
I see my people. Hello, hello. Is that on? Sure. We're going to get real close. Oh, no, everyone can see my email. Thanks for comparing us to coffee. That'll put us up to win. Okay, awesome. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to talk about an always-on influencer marketing program we've been working on for one of our clients, and really begin talking about how to build authenticity and trust in a world where there is very little. Obviously, pink is totally her natural hair color. So this is us. This is the awesome group of people that we get to work with at Top Rank Marketing, some of which are in the audience today. And here's just a handful of the clients that we get to do work for that gets us pretty jazzed. In my role at Top Rank, I'm our Senior Director of Digital Strategy. So I'm working with most of our teams to architect programs that get results for our clients with a focus on influencer marketing.
Sure. I'm an account manager at Top Rank, and I work on a couple of the names that you see up here, GE Digital, 3M, Slack, and LinkedIn, who we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome. So as we all know, winter is not only coming, it's most definitely already here. So both here in Minnesota and in terms of kind of what we're looking at in the marketplace when it comes to marketers and building trust with their audience. So unfortunately, we're finding that over 70% of buyers don't like content that seems like a sales pitch. Who knew, right? We also found that, or the study also found that less than 50% of consumers have trust in brands. And additionally, 68% say that the trust factor influences whether they purchase or not. So that's kind of our current state of marketing. People don't trust us, unfortunately. That's because every brand in existence is saying, don't worry, you can trust us. You can trust us.
But you can.
Yeah, but seriously, you can. But the good news is that 68% of buyers prefer credible content from industry influencers versus just from the brand itself. But only 24% of marketers are actually partnering with people to expand reach, to co-create content in the vein of influencer marketing. And then 1 in 3 people trust influencers over ads, right? So obviously this is leading us towards what we're going to be talking about today, which is why investing in an influencer marketing program can help build that trust, authenticity, credibility that you're looking for. So that means it's time to rejoice. So good news, bad news. But the problem is, God, sorry, every time I look at that I can't stop laughing, is that we're doing it wrong. Right? So many companies, I'm just going to let that go on for the rest of the presentation. Many companies are kind of dipping their toe in the water of influencer marketing, trying it out, but it's not really working the way that they anticipate it to. So we're going to walk through kind of how to build an always-on program that makes sense, that gets you results. So this is just a basic formula for success when we're looking at one of these programs. So identifying that you have topical alignment, partnering with credible influencers, creating some awesome content is a way to start building that authenticity and trust with your audience.
Knowing that formula and having lots of conversations with LinkedIn about those key factors, they set out to create this authentic content experience, partnering with industry experts and influencers so that, with the ultimate goal of reaching those typically hard to access buyers and decision makers. So there's a couple ways to do this. Like any good campaign, there's a lot of decisions to make while setting out. One of the early conversations that we had is, should this be a campaign or is this an always-on program? Campaigns are great. They are really good for achieving a short-term goal, but too often they are completed and then people move on without enough promotion. The always-on approach, especially in this situation, really encouraged the client to think about what are their long-term goals? How can we build these lasting relationships and maintain them?
So part of an always-on approach, we're going to be looking at kind of what the secrets to success for that are. So first of all, finding the right influencer mix, making sure that you're engaging with the right type of people that align with your brand, having some more meaningful interactions with those influencers, and then, one of the things I think you were talking about with the campaigns too, it's just kind of like a wham bam, we're done now. So then there's, no kind of ongoing nurturing of the relationship. And then finding ways to elevate that relationship. So how do you take it off social media and take the next step and begin growing it? And then mutually beneficial content co-creation and then generating ROI for all. So as we're looking at this program, these are the different factors that we're going to be talking through in terms of our approach with LinkedIn's Always On program. So we set out to achieve a few things with them. So like Jane had mentioned, really trying to reach those, hard to reach buyers by partnering with these industry experts that are credible. And I should mention, up to this point too, this has been 100% organic. We have not paid any of these influencers to talk about LinkedIn, because that's not really the point, is we want to co-create content with them, create experiences that are meaningful and authentic, not them pushing products necessarily. But we do want to provide them with information at their fingertips. So if they are speaking at events, they have an opportunity to share something, maybe some new data from LinkedIn that hadn't been shared previously. So make it easy for them to do that. We also really wanted to focus on participating in thoughtful conversations with these people. So, even creating a group of people that can provide product insight, right? So kind of an advisory council of sorts with this influencer group. And then again, collaborating on maybe some established campaign content, some social first campaigns, both of which we'll talk about a little bit later. But again, this is kind of what we were looking to, how we were looking to work with the influencers. And to do that, we set out and created a phased approach as part of our strategy. So in our first phase, we were going to look at really identifying influencers, engaging them in meaningful ways, co-creating some content initially. And then we have phases 2 and 3, which obviously we began to add additional pieces here, really, managing the influencer community, continuing the engagement, finding different collaboration opportunities, and then obviously formalizing the program and then moving on to advocacy. But for today, we're just going to focus on this phase 1. I just said a lot of words really fast. So the first piece is finding the right mix. And part of our process and our strategy when we do these types of programs is really identifying with the client what their top targets are for topics. So this is a combination of speaking with them, doing additional research to identify kind of where that sweet spot is, where they can play, and then matching influencers to those topics. And this, there's obviously different types of influencers beyond these two. You have your niche experts, internal experts, customers, all people you can partner with. But we wanted to focus on our brand individuals and our up-and-comers for a few different reasons. So the brand individuals, obviously, these are very well-known people within the industry. They have a lot of reach. They resonate really well with their audience. And they're very knowledgeable. The up-and-comers, again, they're just kind of starting out. They have fewer followers, but people are engaging with them. They're also really looking for opportunities like this, so it can oftentimes be a bit easier to get them on board and start working with them because they don't have a million people knocking on their door trying to work with them yet. So
I'll add something
go
there
ahead.
really quick. Being able to define these categories with LinkedIn was a really important, education piece, and also a really good level set. So they knew exactly where we were focusing, and I think it helped them feel really comfortable with the categories and what we were going to be doing with the people within each category.
Yep, and it's a good guide for us to go back to again and again and again and say, are we aligning with what we set out to achieve? And we actually use a tool called Tracker to track month over month, are our target influencers mentioning these topics? Are they already creating content about these things? Because we want it to be a natural sort of experience for their audience who's expecting to receive content from them like this. So we are tracking that month over month. That was a good point, Jane. Currently, we are engaging on an ongoing basis 51 influencers that align with our target strategy. So, and again, this list will flex, it will grow, it will decrease a little bit, just depending on who the right people are that we want to engage on an ongoing basis. One of the other things that we worked on with LinkedIn was identifying what was really important to them in the influencers that they they partner with. So obviously the real life experience was a huge piece. We had a lot of their team members say, we want people who really know what they're talking about, who have been in the trenches, who have done the work. Also people that are credible, have a good reputation, can give practical advice. And I think, another thing that was important for LinkedIn was that they were good on camera, especially with the video focus that LinkedIn has taken most recently. Just really making sure that we have people that we could work with in a variety of different ways and create, static content, video content, audio content, things like that. And then, so our first step was finding the right people, matching them to the topics that we, want to be creating content about, but we also wanted to engage with them in a meaningful way. So our team has spent a lot of time investing on social as one of our tactics to make sure that we are engaging with the influencers, that we're asking them questions, that we're resharing their content versus just expecting them to comment on product content, right? So we're finding a way to lift them up and feature them and begin that engagement with these new influencers. And one of the things that's really important too in a program like this, when you're looking at it strategically, is finding a way to give something to the influencers before you ask for anything in return. So before you reach out and say, hey, we'd love to partner on this project with you, find a way to honor them. So this is an example of one piece that we did. It was 15 sales professionals to watch in 2019. It featured 15 of our target influencers, many of whom we'd been warming up on social, but hadn't really engaged much beyond that point when this published. And what we found from this piece alone is that we had over 4 million impressions from just the influencers themselves sharing. So this had nothing to do with everyone else who was sharing it. Just from our target group of influencers, that was the result. It's also on the LinkedIn sales blog, their top shared post in the last 6 months. And it's been live since middle of January, I believe. So again, really making it super shareable, featuring people, finding a way to showcase their expertise. And then in terms of our page views, we were actually about 200% over our benchmark. So again, this was something that was driving a lot of attention to the influencers and for the brand as well. So then the third piece that we're going to talk about before I finally give Jane a chance to talk again is leveling up the relationship. So again, we'd mentioned, starting on social and using that as a platform, but then, are there one-to-one conversations on email that you can have, kind of really, again, beginning to take that relationship to the next level. We also have conducted some phone conversations with people, just getting to know a little bit more about them, what the influencers themselves are trying to achieve, and participating in this program, any other ways we can support that. We're also in the midst of organizing a few in-person conversations, going to coffee, going to happy hour, getting to know them a little bit better. And then events, obviously, are a great way to connect with influencers. Again, just to meet up, to learn more about each other, to get some great content when you see them in person. I know this is something we do a lot with our team. If we're, recording video, audio, or even just sitting down having a conversation and putting some content together seems to work really well.
Yeah, and this is a very natural progression for an authentic relationship, right? That's kind of the key word, is you got to keep it easy and natural. Okay, so when we talk about building this mutually beneficial content, what we need to do is be sure, of course, that it is good for the influencers and good for the brand. So for the influencers, this content that they're helping us create and contributing to is good for them because it helps them build their own brands, right? As thought leaders, it gives them a platform, it gives them access to an audience that they might not have on their own sites or other platforms on which they're publishing. For LinkedIn, this is, of course, the key. We want to be sure the brand is happy as well. The brand really gets a lot out of this, too. They get access to members of the audience that they haven't been able to reach before. Maybe these are people who had been following some of the influencers but were not familiar with the brand, or at least not engaging with the brand yet. So, bottom line, generating ROI for all. This post in particular, which happens to be ROI related as well, not a coincidence, is one that we created where we went out and asked 8 influencers for content about what their favorite statistic is on this topic. ROI is a pillar of content that LinkedIn writes a lot about, that they want to be thought leaders about, so it was a perfect topic to tap these influencers for. We found people who already are talking about ROI and had them give us just a little tidbit each. This particular post, 77% of the influencer-driven users were new, so that just speaks to the amount of new audience members that we can reach by tapping these influencers for content. Similar to the last post that we looked at, this is one of the top 10 shared posts in the last 6 months on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog, which is huge, and this only went live at the beginning of this month. This is 65% above the page view benchmark, which is thousands of page views. So as a bonus here, page views is a huge KPI, not only for our direct contacts on this influencer program, but also for the team that runs the blog, also a client of ours. So we're able to connect those 2 business units within LinkedIn and say, hey, not only is this beneficial for the influencers and for the brand, but also for multiple business units, and let's kind of keep talking about why this is important and what we can keep doing to publish content like this.
Yeah, and I think one of the other big KPIs we talk about is getting people to subscribe to both the LSS and the LMS blogs, and both of these posts have driven a lot of people to at least the action to subscribe. So just like Jane was talking about, really supporting the objectives of multiple business units with one program. And I think it works on the other side too, and our other programs with different LinkedIn BUs, they're coming to us now and being like, oh, can we include some of your influencers? Like, we really want to get some extra boost out of this. We want to make sure that we are adding some authenticity. We're adding credible voices. And it's great because, we're talking with all of them and they're talking with each other and finding further ways to collaborate, which I think is great. So what's next? So many things. So again, we are entering phase 2 of our program with LinkedIn communities who we've been working on this with. We also are doing a big content refresh of one of their most, LinkedIn Marketing's one of their most popular pieces of all time. And we are actually including influencers that we are currently engaging and managing as part of it to add, again, that credibility, the authenticity. We're also focusing on a social first campaign where we're featuring the influencers a little bit about their stories and kind of tapping into some of the knowledge they have.
The general theme is that we are continuing to collect a lot of this content, engage with influencers, and be able to use that content in multiple ways. And repurpose it too. We can kind of file it away, and if something doesn't make the cut into a blog post, for example, maybe it's a really good fit for this ebook we know is coming out soon.
Yep, and we're trying to be very careful and mindful about how we're crafting the questions we're asking, and making sure there's a common thread between some of them, so we can, like Jane talked about, repurpose them in the future, add that little extra something to blog content or ebooks. So yeah, good point. So our key learnings, so again, and I think, this applies to companies of all sizes. It's not just LinkedIn. So even if you aren't an enterprise brand, finding a way to really match yourself with the right influencers. I think a lot of companies, especially when they're doing campaigns, like Jane mentioned, jump in really fast to just identifying people that they think look good on paper, reaching out to them, including them. But I think for a long-term strategy, it's important you find the right people and know that your group of people will kind of ebb and flow as time goes on. The authenticity in relationships is super important, especially with trust in marketing being what it is. Showing value to the influencers in multiple ways, especially if there isn't compensation up front. Find a way to create that mutual value. Create content that builds trust, and then obviously, if possible, integrating with other BUs so that there's mutual benefit. Okay, so thank you all so much. This is one of many awkward photos of Jane and I. And just wanted to let everyone know we are hiring, so if anyone's interested, please come talk to us afterwards.
Oh, sure, thank you.
Okay. Hi. I was just wondering if you could clarify where the posts that you're writing, where do they live, who's authoring them, and then I'm also curious if you ever compensate the influencers that you're working with to author original content.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. LinkedIn has two blogs that we work with them on. They're the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog and the LinkedIn Sales Solutions blog. So depending on the topic, they would be the blog posts specifically are published on either of those. They also have a lot of resources pages where other content is often published, but typically it's on those blogs. And do you want to talk about the influencer stuff?
So we definitely, where appropriate, pay influencers. We have not yet as part of this program. I think as we move further into our phase 2 and our phase 3, and we formalize the program a bit more and are maybe asking more of our influencers, there will definitely be opportunities for compensation. But as of right now, they're contributing short form content, or we're doing an interview series right now, again, which really highlights their expertise. I think if we were to go out and ask them to give us 1,000 words on a topic, that's a different conversation to have. But that's not quite where we are with them right now. That helps answer it.
Okay, I kind of have two questions. Just kind of curious what tools you guys are using. You mentioned Tracker as one of them. And then also, have you guys ever worked with an influencer, been super disappointed by the content or the relationship, and then had to kind of like turn them down in the future when they've reapproached you for partnerships?
That's the funny thing about working with influencers is you don't have control over what they're saying, right? So when we have video, audio, or even text-based content, we do, kind of, once we intake it, we review it, we might zhuzh it a little bit, and we typically try to send it back to them beforehand so that they can approve it if anything has changed. We've definitely had some influencers that at one time were good partners and then weren't anymore. And it's, I think just being upfront that maybe they're not a fit for what you're working on right now is something to think about. And I know she asked another question, but I forgot what it was. Tools. Use a lot of different tools. So Tracker is a kind of end-to-end influencer marketing platform, as well as Analytica. They offer similar services. Nimble is a CRM that we use that can be used to kind of track influencer relationships. And then, using LinkedIn, even as a discovery tool, is helpful, especially if you have, Sales Navigator. You can identify people a few different ways. And then from a tracking standpoint, BuzzSumo is another one we use to identify who maybe the top sharers of content are.
Yeah, and related to both of those questions, the vetting process for influencers is really important. There's a lot of research that goes into identifying the right people at the right time, which cuts down on the need to go back and say, actually, we can't use this, or not a conversation that we want to have, right? So yeah, I think if you pay attention at the beginning, it reduces that risk.
Yep. And I think we also use Google Analytics to set up individual tracking codes for each influencer, so we can identify who's sharing, who's driving, page views, conversions, things like that. So that helps us identify who's a good fit going forward.
Hi, Ashley.
Oh, hello, Jason.
I was just wondering, so that 4.5 million impressions that you had, was just curious on, is that something you're getting from Tracker, where you're getting each individual influencer's contribution to that post as far as the new kind of subscribers or visibility? Or is that coming from like a BuzzSumo, something along those lines?
So the 4.5 million impressions did come from Tracker, and that was based on inserting the link and identifying who was sharing that specific link that was part of our influencer community.
Do you have a unique URL that you're using for each influencer, or is it just for that campaign?
So for that one specifically, it was the honoring post, so people didn't contribute to it, we just mentioned them. So we just had one link that we used versus the one that Jane talked about where people were actually co-creating with us. We did have individual tracking codes for each person that we then tracked in analytics.
If I heard you guys correctly, I think you mentioned the KPIs being subscriptions to the two blogs that you were focused on. Mm-hmm. I was curious, were there any sales metrics or any other conversions that you were looking at as KPIs as part of these campaigns?
Yes, there are many KPIs that we look at for these blog programs. We track really closely organic traffic, clicks to subscribe. LinkedIn internally also relates all of that to revenue. So they've got a wacky formula to figure out, what a subscription is worth, what a page view is worth, all of that. So yep, we keep an eye on that very closely. No, they allude to it a lot.
Some top secret stuff.
We can take a couple more questions. Or I can hand the microphone back to Michael.
One more round of applause for Ashley and Jane. Thank you, guys. All right, so our last case study of the day is going to be shared with us by our friends from Fast Horse. Let's get plugged in and logged in there. Right there. That was a no. Oh, audio was yes. Okay, I'll take care of that. All right, so please help me welcome to the stage Talia Wishman and Sarah Friedel. Friedley, sorry. Did I get it?
You got it, yeah.
I'm never good with these things. There we go. I'm suddenly also realizing that these pants don't have pockets, which I really miss. Anyway, I'm Talia. I am the social media director at Fast Horse. I've been with Fast Horse for about 2.5 years.
And I'm Sarah. I'm a social media strategist at Fast Horse, and I've been there just about a year.
Yeah. And just a little bit of background on the agency. So we're just a few blocks from here in the North Loop. We've been around for about 17 years. Started as a PR shop, now we're a fully integrated creative agency. And today we are going to talk about a brand we worked with called Unidays. We worked with them on a back-to-school campaign, and their ask to us was to create a back-to-school campaign to build awareness with primarily incoming freshmen, but also just sort of general college-age people, college students. So most people don't know a whole lot about the brand Unidays. It is super popular in the UK. That's where they were founded and are based. In the UK, they have about 90% awareness. In the US, they have about 10% awareness. But basically, Unidays works with brands like ASOS, Urban Outfitters, Microsoft to offer student discounts. So they have this student discount website. You go there, sign up with your student email address, and you have access to all of these different student discounts through their site. So back to school is a huge time for them. And they wanted us to take their creative, so basically a set of static assets, and to create a media plan that included paid media and social, and to reach incoming freshmen who weren't currently members of their platform. And basically a full awareness campaign during that back-to-school time frame. And then these are just a few of the things. So obviously back to school is a hugely crowded time frame for any advertisers, anyone in the retail space, just extra crammed during that time. They have a really big competitive set as well. So things like Groupon, Living Social, even some of the brands they work with are considered competitors to them because Microsoft might be advertising their own student discounts at the same time that Unidays is advertising, come to us to get your Microsoft discounts. So we really wanted to try to break through some of that clutter. And so what we needed to do was sort of take the brief and the ask from the client and say, we're going to challenge you a little bit because we're not just going to take your static assets and put them in social and put them in banner ads because with this college-age audience, they're not going to care. We're not going to do anything for you if we just do that. So we sort of started with the idea that we needed to get to know college students a little bit better. So we did some audience modeling through Simmons to build, behaviors, to figure out a little bit more about this audience. We did some on-the-street interviews in some alumni networks that we're a part of. We worked with the CLA agency at the U of M, who we have some connections with. We talked to our own interns. And then we also did some focus groups. And what we learned was actually that this group of people is a whole lot like me. They are constantly on their devices. My battery is already at like 20%, and it is like not even 10 o'clock. So they're losing sleep because they're on their phones. They're constantly connected. They're very conscious of their image. That they're sort of doing that Instagram scroll all day. There's like a lot of these very beautiful people in their faces all the time. They are stylish. They are interested in experimenting and being unique. And they use their phones for all information, right? So they have their calendars in there. They are, their next location is mapped in their phone. So they're kind of always on, as we would say. Come in. Oh, did I go too far? Yep, I did. There we go. During back to school time, their mentality is really focused on, they have some anxieties about going back to school, especially for freshmen who are starting at a new college. They are feeling a ton of anxiety. They're maybe like excited at the same time. They want to have like the, most fantastic clothing and devices. They probably are buying like a planner to write in that they'll never use, like I always do. But they want to have like all the right stuff, right? The right tech, the right clothing. And some of the people that they kind of trust, how we can resonate with them, and the way that we will try to reach them is like through their friends, through some of these celebrity type influencer people. They like to buy the same products as like maybe the Kardashians do, or maybe not the Kardashians, but like maybe a fitness influencer that they really like, that sort of type of person. They often trust those people almost as much as they trust their own friends. And their own personal networks are really big and influential with them. Thank you. So these are just a few of the things we know about them, right? They are very social, they're addicted to audiovisual, and they are very focused on mobile. So the way that we plan to reach them for this specific back-to-school campaign is to tell the Unidays story through the platforms they live on. Part of that was taking the creative campaign that our clients were sort of handing to us, so some of those static assets they already had, some of the stuff they were working on in-house. We do very little work that we don't come up with the ideas, where we're not doing the creative work for it. So this was sort of a unique thing for us. But we wanted to make sure that our clients knew we could, that's okay. We could work with them to use their assets in the right way, do some testing and learning on those things. But we also brought them this idea to do some co-creation. And basically the things that were really important to us were cultural connections, so engaging with influencers to sort of break through some, we know that a lot of this audience is going to have ad blockers on. They may not respond to our ads that are, programmatic and that sort of thing. So how do we reach them in a different way as well? We want to be in their favorite channels. We want to give them ad experiences that they don't super hate, right? So we don't want them to skip everything we're doing. We don't want to sound like a brand that's just super like in your face or like, hey, we know what you need, kids. And we want them to opt into the experience when they can. We also want to be super targeted. We didn't have a ton of money, so we want to make sure that we're targeting campuses when students are there. we want to leverage some behavioral data to say, like, yes, you are interested in shopping, or you are interested in discounts, or you like technology, that sort of thing. And then we also wanted to negatively target any users who are already signed up for our site, because that's just a wasted impression, right? If you already are a member, we don't need to ask you to become a member.
So then that led to actually starting to work with influencers and starting to figure out what we were going to do on social and with paid. And as Talia mentioned, influencers were a big part of this campaign. So we really started to look at a ton of different influencers that were either college age or had a college age audience. A lot of these influencers really, again, would help us lend credibility and authenticity to Unidays, since it was relatively unknown in the US. Especially, as Talia mentioned, our audience really, really loves influencers, and they take their credibility almost as much as their friends. So really using those influencers and making sure that we were sharing that Unidays message through them was really important. And then combining those influencer channels with paid support was really going to help us maximize impressions and resonance. So then this kind of shows you what we did with the influencers. We started looking at tons and tons of influencers through our platform Creator IQ, and that kind of just lets us get really targeted with the kinds of influencers that we're looking at. And then we kind of go off of into their own platforms and really vet them and make sure that we're not seeing any red flags that the client wouldn't want to work with them about. So we ended up working with 7 different influencers, kind of ranging from tech to fashion and beauty, to really hit on all of those different areas that Unidays offers. And we really were able to work with these influencers. We did pay them, so we were able to kind of work with them to kind of shape those messages, but make sure that it was still a natural fit for their channels as well. So the top tier and the mid-tier influencers were kind of our sweet spot throughout this campaign. And something else that worked really well for us, we worked with 3 influencers that were kind of within the same group. And they kind of helped to kind of promote their own content too. So that was a little built-in larger network that we were able to pull from as well. This is just kind of like a snapshot of everything that we got. So tons of Insta content, both in the feed and in stories. The swipe up feature worked really well to just go to the Unidays landing page and get those people signed up for Unidays. But then IGTV was still fairly new, so we were testing that and kind of playing with that and seeing how that would work on influencer channels while sharing the Unidays message. And then we also had all influencers do YouTube videos for us, which we then were able to get cut downs of and use in Unidays social. So Unidays' own social, Talia also alluded to this, but we did mix the brand content with the influencer content to kind of test what was working, and we really wanted to use video first and see what kind of would work to reach our audience the best. And we noticed that if we were combining our spend on different platforms at the same time, that kind of led to a higher reach and more efficiency. And that also helped us to drive relevance and engagement. And using that influencer content really helped us to cut down on production costs, just because we had a ton of content to pull from, and we were able to work with them to be a little more authentic in the content that we were sharing. This kind of shows you the targeting again. We really wanted to be really specific with this audience. It's still reaching that college-age student, but then the interests and the behaviors kind of touch on a few areas that Unidays offers. I don't think that this covers everything that Unidays offers, but again, it's back to school. We wanted to be really targeted on the things that they were really focusing on during back to school time. No, this is fine. So going to social, we didn't touch on the Snap targeting, but we did also use Snapchat with Snapchat ads and Snapchat filters. And we were really, really super targeted with those, and we used zip codes to make sure that we were right around those universities, especially with these Snapchat filters. We used 2 filters. This one worked a lot better for us and performed a lot better just because it was a little more general and it fit in a lot of settings. But you can kind of see the Snapchat of how we were using influencer content alongside of the brand content. And we were able to be really flexible with this as well. So if we were noticing that a carousel ad wasn't working the best for us, we kind of we're able to swap out different assets and make it work better for us. So paid media, I will give you a little warning. Our paid media guy that worked on this, he's currently in Palm Springs. Otherwise, he would be here to give you the best on this. But we will try to do it justice, and if there's any questions, we'll try to answer them as best as we can.
Or we'll write them down and email you.
Yeah, exactly. So this kind of gives you the snapshot of everything that we were doing in paid. We really wanted to leverage a different mix of all sorts of channels to get at that audience and really maximize reach again. But we also wanted to use the ad buys that were least invasive to really make sure that our audience wasn't having a negative view of Unidays. So with streaming services, I don't think I know a college student who doesn't have some sort of streaming service. And we ended up going with Spotify just because it's a larger target and it's more efficient for us. We did run audio and video ads on Spotify, and with the video ads, it was one of those things where they would opt in to even watch the video for 30 minutes of music or ad-free listening. So it's kind of like the perfect sort of thing. They opt in, and then they're kind of rewarded for it too. So very much not invasive. And then with YouTube, we, again, went towards a non-invasive ad buy there. So using those video ads that are skippable after 5 seconds was the best option for us. And then that really helped us to kind of try to tailor that creative so that it was all those key messages were in those first 5 seconds. So even if they did skip ahead, they were getting the gist of Unidays and benefits for them. So going into results, one of the biggest measures of success throughout this was awareness, and we did see that there was an awareness lift of 33% throughout this campaign. And this was a really, really short time frame. I think it was only a month and a half, so that's pretty good for a month and a half. All channels met or exceeded the campaign benchmarks, which is also a really great metric. Display media earned the highest reach, but Spotify audio drove the highest awareness lift. And that was just kind of interesting for us to see, considering that on social, video performed best across the board, which isn't a surprise that video performed best on social, but it's interesting to see the two differences there. And then with the influencer video, that earned our highest engagement rates at 8%. And then some key takeaways. So as Talia mentioned before, sometimes the brief maybe should be questioned and maybe should be steered in a little bit of a different direction to help get the client the best results possible. Using influencers really, really helped this campaign stay authentic and resonate with our audience. And using that content on Uniday's channels also was really, really helpful for us. Working with influencers who are college students can be tough. So we had a lot of back and forth and a lot of ghost calls and a lot of what you would expect from college students.
We would literally say, we would like to give you money,
yeah.
And they would not respond to us. It was kind of
crazy.
Unbelievable.
Just crazy. Again, video proved to be most successful on social in terms of engagement, and then really mixing all those different platforms and using influencers really helped us achieve that awareness lift. Any questions? Sure.
Hello. So I noticed you repurposed a lot of the influencer content for the brand channels, and I'm wondering if you saw a difference, or was it pretty comparable in terms of results of like click-throughs or awareness from the influencer channels compared to the corporate channels, brand channels?
Yeah, so we saw pretty much across the board, whether on their owned channels or on our Unidays brand channels, that our influencer content performed better than their brand stuff. We kind of assumed that going in. We told the brand that we thought that was how it would go. But we really see it as, there's sort of this dual purpose there with, the brand messaging really hit those key messages. It's sort of that like recognizable stuff. So those are the brand colors, those are the products the brand sells, where our influencers were doing a little bit more of that, like building that, resonating brand message that might take people a little bit longer to get to. So it's sort of that dual purpose But yeah, the influencer stuff performed better.
Thanks. Hi. Oh, is it me? Yeah. Okay, good. That's
you're
me.
right
Oh,
there.
I'm right
Hi.
here.
Hi.
You were looking around. I was
I'm
like, is there someone else?
Where's that voice?
Your influencer identification, can you tell me a little bit about that process, especially with younger age, big followers? Were you worried about fake followers at all when you were looking through this process?
Yes, so as you mentioned, we started with Creator IQ, but that's kind of for us a starting point. We really dig into all of the influencers. We have Google searches that we set up. We look back on them for like years and years just to make sure there's no red flags, nothing happening. As far as fake followers, that's also something we look into. So if we do notice that they might seem to have a large amount of fake followers, or if the engagement rates are lower, or if the engagement seems a little fishy, we might not go towards that influencer. That might be one that we just kind of decide not to go with.
Hi. I love the stat that you were able to validate the 33% brand lift, but how were you measuring that when you were looking at both earned and paid media? Is that something that you were using maybe a programmatic platform and getting that specific metric, or were you consolidating from native platforms?
So the brand team, the Unidays marketing team, did a pre and post campaign study, and I was trying to look right before we got up here at what that partner was. So the other person who isn't here is our VP of strategy, Liz. So she worked with them on sort of identifying those questions, and I can't remember exactly where that study was served. It wasn't through the programmatic partners, though. It was a separate piece that the brand paid for.
All right.
Are you able to share the compensation range?
Can you repeat the question?
He just asked if we're able to share the compensation range for the influencers. So that was something that was really interesting. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. That definitely was interesting, and it really ranged depending on the influencer. So we really like to approach things where we don't kind of have a set per influencer. We want to pay them something, but we kind of look at how many followers they have, what their engagement is like, and then it also depends on what they're actually creating with us. So I don't know if we can give you an answer on that because it ranged so much. But with this one, it was unique too because we always try to negotiate with the influencers just to try to get the best price for our clients. This one was unique because there were some influencers that were coming in way higher than other influencers where the ask was the same and their following was less than that other influencer. So that was kind of unique to this project too. But it's always a negotiation process for us.
I think too, one of the things that was really interesting is the vertical the influencer played in was a really big part of how much they charged. So I think we were both surprised by, if you saw in the sort of snapshot of all the influencers we worked with, the blonde guy who was holding the computer, his name's Keaton. He's got across his YouTube channels like 2-ish million subscribers, and he charged less or the same as some of our lifestyle or fashion influencers that were, a quarter of his following and much less engagement. But just from a broad standpoint, I would say that middle tier that we played in for, a video partnership and some social content, they were probably in the $5,000 range for sort of this. We mostly asked them to do 2 pulses of content. And then some of the people that are a little bit higher on the spectrum of, where their following's at, they were closer to $10K for multiple pieces of content. But I think even for some of their followings, we were expecting them to come in quite a bit higher. Somebody with 2 to 5 million followers, creating video content for us, that's a pretty big lift for them. So, yeah, and a very tight timeline.
We can take some more? Yeah.
So maybe I missed this, but did you guys end up doing new creative assets for the paid social ads that you did, or were those all existing?
So the brand team at the same, so basically they came to us and said, we're going to develop new creative assets. We'd like you to put media behind it. So we were able to work with them a little bit on, we'd like to, they would send us a shot list kind of, or some storyboards, and we would try to impact it a little bit. So asking them for less text, things like that. One of the biggest things we did for optimization on Facebook and Instagram is in those carousels. So they gave us only static assets for the carousels. And a couple weeks into the campaign, we noticed that they were just super expensive to run those. People weren't really engaging with them. They weren't clicking through on this thing. So we threw our video assets that they gave us as the first card in the carousel. And it got those engagement rates up so high because Facebook considers a view an engagement. And all of a sudden we went from, I can't remember how much it was that we were paying for those, but all of a sudden it was like super, super inexpensive, like the least expensive thing we were serving because we just made that optimization midway through. So there were things like that we definitely could kind of impact, but the creative on those brand assets was sort of set in stone.
Okay, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, ladies. Thanks for coming. I hope to see you next month on the 29th.